James Olcott was used to closing deals, not noticing people. That night, as cold rain soaked the city, he stepped out of his luxury car, his mind boiling from a failed merger. Everything felt like a waste, until he noticed her. A little girl, no older than 8, stood barefoot near the sidewalk, drenched, clutching a cardboard sign. Her lips trembled, but her eyes were steady, watching him. James, annoyed and eager to get home, tried to walk past. But then she reached out and tugged gently at his coat. "Mister, please help, not for me, she's too weak to beg now." Her voice was quiet, almost drowned by the rain. She pointed toward the shadowy corner of the lot, where a rusted, abandoned car sat. Hesitant, James followed her gaze. It was just a junker, half covered in leaves and grime. He almost turned away, but something about the girl's calm desperation rooted him in place. "Who?" he asked, his voice softer now. She didn't speak, just walked slowly toward the old car. James followed, the drizzle soaking through his suit. She struggled to open the trunk, but when she did, the sight stopped James cold. Inside, curled up and motionless, was a woman, thin, pale, barely breathing. A makeshift blanket covered her. James felt a strange tightness in his chest. The girl looked up at him, eyes wide. "She's my mom," she whispered. "She hasn't eaten in 2 days." In that moment, James didn't see a beggar. He saw a daughter refusing to give up. The businessman in him went silent. The man, the human, finally woke up. James followed the little girl through puddles and shadows, the distant sound of city life fading behind him. They turned the corner behind an old supermarket, where a rusted, forgotten car sat under a flickering street lamp. The girl didn't speak, she simply walked to the trunk and motioned toward it with trembling hands. James hesitated. Something about this felt too surreal, too heavy for someone like him. He reached for the handle, his fingers cold and unsure. As the trunk creaked open, a wave of damp air and decay hit him. But what truly stole his breath was the sight within. There, curled tightly like a child, lay a woman, gaunt and motionless, her skin pale, lips slightly blue. Her clothes were thin, soaked, clinging to her fragile frame. Her ribs were faintly visible, and her chest barely moved with each shallow breath. James stood frozen, the rain forgotten. This wasn't a statistic or a headline, this was someone's mother. This was who the little girl had meant when she said, "She's too weak to beg." Suddenly, everything James valued, his penthouse, his cars, the multi-million-dollar deals, seemed hollow. How could the world allow this? How could he have walked past people like this every day without seeing them? The girl reached into the trunk and gently touched her mother's face. "I kept her warm as best I could," she said softly. "I thought maybe someone good would come." James swallowed hard, a lump rising in his throat. He realized then, this moment, this child, this woman, was about to change everything. The warmth of the 24-hour diner felt like another world. Steam rose from mugs of hot cocoa, and the soft clink of plates echoed gently through the room. James sat across from the little girl and her mother, now wrapped in blankets, her head resting weakly on the table. A doctor, hastily called by James, had just left, assuring him that the woman would recover with rest, food, and care. The girl, Sarah, nibbled on toast, but her eyes never left her mother. She looked tired, too young to carry so much, but there was something unbreakable in her. She was doing everything she could, Sarah began quietly. "After my dad died, we had nothing. But Mom, she never stopped working. 2 jobs. Sometimes 3. I used to wait outside the laundromat and pretend I was doing homework." James listened, stirred in a way he hadn't felt in years. The girl wasn't crying. Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't looking for pity, just someone to hear her. "One day," she continued, "she didn't wake up after work. So I brought her to that car. It was all I could find. I thought she'd get better if I kept her warm. I begged. I prayed. I told her we'd be okay. Because she always told me that. James leaned back, his throat tight. This girl, Sarah, was more than brave. She was the kind of strong no school, no boardroom, no bank account could ever create. She said we'd get through it, Sarah whispered again, a small smile forming. I believe her. And in that moment, James knew, this wasn't charity. This was purpose. And he'd been blind to it for too long. Sunlight filtered through the hospital room window, casting soft gold across the bed where Sarah's mother lay. Her eyes fluttered open, weak but clear, and the first thing she saw was Sarah, clean, fed, and smiling through tears. The woman gasped, reaching for her daughter. "You're okay," she whispered, voice cracking. James stood quietly near the door, watching the reunion with a lump in his throat. He'd visited every day since that night, bringing food, clothes, and updates on Sarah's health and her mother's recovery. Today, he held more than just kindness. In his hands were 3 folders. When the mother was able to sit up, James approached and gently placed the folders on the table. "This," he said, opening the first, "is a job offer at my company. Part-time, flexible hours, full benefits." He opened the second. "This is a lease to an apartment I'm covering until you're on your feet." And finally, the third. "And this is a scholarship for Sarah. Full ride. Whatever school she chooses. She deserves that much, and more." The room fell silent. The woman covered her mouth, sobbing softly. Sarah stared at James, eyes wide, unable to speak. He knelt beside her. "You saved your mom's life," he said gently. "Now let me help you both live it." Sarah reached out, her small hand wrapping around his. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of everything they'd been through. "Thank you, for seeing us." James squeezed her hand back, his eyes misting. In that moment, he didn't feel like a CEO. He felt like a man who'd finally done something truly right. Laughter echoed through the air as children ran across the grass outside the new outreach center. The spring sun bathed the building in light, its clean walls now alive with murals painted by local kids. Inside, volunteers handed out warm meals, clothes, and hope. James stood near the entrance, watching it all with quiet pride. He wasn't there as a CEO today, no suit, no phone in hand, just a man who had once been blind to the struggles hiding in plain sight. Near the serving table, Sarah moved with practiced joy, her volunteer shirt hanging loose on her tiny frame. Her hair was tied back in a ponytail, and her smile could have lit up the whole block. She offered a plate of food to a boy her age and even gave him her cookie. Behind her, her mother stood tall, healthy now, organizing supplies and guiding other mothers through the center. Her eyes often drifted to Sarah, full of gratitude, full of life. James couldn't stop smiling. What had started as a moment of guilt and surprise had turned into purpose. He'd expanded the outreach center across the city, funded job training, housing support, and scholarships, all in Sarah's name. As he looked at the little girl who once tugged at his coat in the rain, a voice echoed in his mind, gentle and true. Sometimes, the smallest voice carries the loudest truth. One child's courage opened a heart long closed. And with that, a life worth billions truly began. In a world often too busy to notice the silent suffering around us, one small, trembling voice cut through the noise, and changed everything. What began as a chance encounter on a rainy night unfolded into a powerful journey of compassion, courage, and transformation. Sarah's quiet plea didn't just save her mother's life, it awakened a man who had spent his own life chasing success, only to discover the true meaning of worth in a single act of kindness. This story reminds us that beneath the surface of every stranger lies a story we haven't heard, a struggle we haven't seen. And sometimes, it takes the innocence and bravery of a child to open the eyes of the powerful. James didn't just give Sarah and her mother a second chance, they gave him something far greater, a reason to use his wealth for good, to lead with empathy, and to listen when no one else would. In the end, it wasn't money, power, or prestige that left the deepest mark. It was the simple choice to care. And that is how one moment of humanity created a legacy far greater than any fortune.